Aladdin is one of the most beloved classic cartoons of its era, with a legacy that still lives on to this day. And all of the success it's seen is due in no small part to the performance put in by Robin Williams. Williams played the part of the face of the franchise. That, of course, not being its titular character Aladdin, but rather its blue-faced buffoon, the Genie. But Robin did more than just lend his vocal cords to the part. He gave a very distinct voice to a very unique character, with a performance that was infused with Williams' personality, giving the Genie his signature chaotic comedic energy. Not to oversell it here, but it literally feels like the Genie was made using Robin's essence. He gave this character a voice, and that voice was his own, which really helped matters, because Williams' quick wit, fast-paced meta-nature really complemented the Genie's otherworldly presence.
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
I can't bring people back from the dead. It's not a pretty picture. I don't like doing it.
You're a lot smaller than my last master. Either that or I'm getting bigger. Look at me from the side. Do I look different to you?
Right, Sparky, here's the deal. If you want to court the little lady, you gotta be a straight shooter. Do you got it?
Hell, little buddy.
I can't help you. I work for Senior Psychopath now.
Don't stand until the rug has come to a complete stop.
Thank you. Goodbye now. Goodbye.
Robin treated his vocal sessions like they were stand-up sets, trying all different kinds of improv and impressions throughout his time in the booth, a lot of which made it to the final cut. Though that's not to say that there wasn't anything left on the cutting room floor. Williams spent a lot of time recording and went through a lot of material, so he made sure that there was plenty for the special features section.
Only one way to do it, boy. Tell her the truth. I'm not a liar.
No substitutions, exchanges, or refunds. That's all. And don't try to wish for more wishes, because that's a little redundant. Can you say redundant?
All right, baby. Here's a little magic coming at you right now.
Tell her the truth. Say the phrase again. Use it in a sentence. I will tell her the truth.
Easy for you to say.
No, quiet.
Shut the box.
Easy for you. Go back in the left. So tell me, when your life passed in front of your eyes, did you go, I'm not that interesting?
This actor was made to play this character. He was effortlessly entertaining and just overall likable. You wished you had a friend like him. You could feel the connection that Robin had with this character. I know I can. I have to admit, just hearing that voice come out of that cartoon fills me with such a sense of nostalgia. Because Robin Williams was the Genie. And this would become a problem when Robin Williams was not the Genie.
But never duplicated. Duplicated. Genie.
No, I'm not talking about him. Not yet, anyway. We'll get there. We'll get there. Unfortunately, Disney and Williams had a contract dispute following the success of Aladdin. Williams was taking a pay cut with the understanding that he wouldn't be perceived as the movie's star, and wouldn't be used excessively in marketing, which he absolutely was, 100%. It was this face on the merchandise, and it was his name on the trailers. So leaving the product left those in charge with the task of doing the impossible, replacing Robin Williams. So for its sequel and its follow-up series, the role was then taken over by Dan Castellaneta, whose name I probably just butchered. We're talking about Homer Simpson himself.
He's big. He's blue. He's back.
Not enough.
And look, a talented actor he is. But Robin Williams, he noticeably is not. And that's not a slight against him, because realistically, how could he be? The most unfortunate thing is that Dan's played the part for years in various projects. And for the longest time, people have complained about him in the role. And if I'm being entirely honest here, I know many will disagree with this, but I will stand by this statement. Dan doesn't do a bad job. Had I never heard Robin Williams in the part, I would think this performance was more than acceptable. He brings a very similar clown-like fun to the role like his predecessor did. The voice seems to match the model, it makes sense for the character, and I can even buy the dynamics between he and the rest of the cast in the movie and the show.
Come on, everyone. Get in here. Home cooking. Let's go.
Guess I'll have to force feed them.
Take that, you dirty rats.
Friendly neighborhood wedding consultant.
Now says we got a stall.
Look alive, people!
Except you, of course. Leave now, I will be forced to destroy you.
Destroy me.
Oh, goody. I've intimidated him.
You can't mix sand magic with genie magic.
It might unravel the fabric of the universe and annihilate all life.
Besides, it's against union rules.
Right. Got it. Say no more. Enough said. Roger, over and out.
Funnily enough, he'd actually get a chance to voice the character on an episode of The Simpsons as well. An episode that saw two of the most famous characters the actors played interact with one another.
You rubbed? You must like me. You really, really like me. Here's Genie.
By all means, he wasn't a bad choice at all. Unfortunately, the problem is that there really is no replacing Robin Williams. The man applied his personality to his performance, and because of that, anytime someone else has been asked to step into the studio, well, they sound like a cheap impersonation of a character who spends most of their time doing impersonations. I think ultimately Dan really deserves a lot more praise for his work, because it's not only serviceable, it's genuinely really good. It's just after you've heard Robin's take on the character, there really is no comparison. And Dan at times can sound like he's desperately trying to recapture the magic of a former genie. Luckily, Williams would return to the role in the final installment in the Aladdin trilogy, a movie which somehow saw him even more unhinged than ever before. If he was dialing it up to 10 in the first movie, he was dialing it up to 20 in this one. He spends most of his screen time doing impressions, even more so than in the first film, and there's a lot more references. And I'm also sure the excess attention put on the character in this outing had a lot to do with the return of the man playing the part. Ironically, he doesn't contribute to the story in any major way, but he still feels like a much-needed addition.
Fears of the future family man, L from Agrabah, share with us. It's a bachelor party, big boy! And your name is? I'm Thor. You're Thor? Well, it hurts. Once again, this whole broadcast has been brought to you by sand. It's everywhere. Oh, look, it's a Kodiak moment. Put that bear out of here. Go, no. Got a pot here. Help me. I can't stop myself. Somebody rub the lamp. Oh, you know I feel it.
If there was any doubt that Williams was the genie that Disney wanted you to remember, then look no further at this Disney short, as they brought back the man's magic post-mortem.
I haven't seen a fall like that since Rome. Oh, much better.
Or just look at the fact that the latest genie voice, Jim Meskimen, another last name I really hope that I'm not butchering, was tasked with recreating Williams' performance, not Dan Castellaneta's.
Name's Genie of the Lamp. How you doing? Just make a wish and all your problems will be solved.
Sora.
You're the best. Talk about a friend. Magic at your service all day, 24/7 and 365. That's right. I'm all yours.
And it's a pretty solid impression, too. I mean, it's a lot closer than Homer was anyway. I think without the genie, Aladdin would be missing its identity. Just like how without Robin Williams, it feels like the genie is missing his. For all of Dan's contributions, I think the character will best be remembered for the performance that defined it. That, of course, being the originator. In the live-action remake that came years later, Will Smith took over the role. And I didn't hate it, to be honest with you. I mean, I guess I didn't really love it either, but I did at least, like it. It wasn't the genie from the animated movies, but yet again, how could it be? More importantly, it wasn't asking the actor to be. It seemed like the live-action movie learned its lesson from the second Genie. Asking an actor to play the exact part that another made famous isn't necessarily a recipe for success. So instead of asking someone to be Robin Williams, they got Will Smith and asked him to be Will Smith. And you know what? He did a pretty good job of that. He made for a fun, likable character just like the original Genie. And I don't think he would have done that successfully if he was being tasked with trying to be the first Genie.
I know you can't tell, but I am very pale. This is sky blue. My natural pigmentation is navy. Give us some sun.
Okay, Genie.
Ooh,
I wish.
little monkey with the lamp trick. Never seen that one before. I am not a giant. I am a genie. There is a difference. Giants are not real. Genies don't really have friends.
I thought you said you never had a friend like me.
No, I said you never had a friend like me.
With all due respect, for me, and I think for most people, Robin Williams will always be the one and only. But having said that, I don't think we've ever truly gotten a bad version of the blue guy. We had the OG, we had a solid stand-in, and we had a unique take on the character tailored to the actor that was playing him. All in all, not a bad one amongst them. Well, that was a tale of two, or I guess technically 3 genies, and the talents that brought this animated character to life. Recasting is always a challenge, and that's even if the character that you're recasting is in a set of movies that don't share a continuity. But when it comes to major movie franchises with connected cinematic universes, replacing a character could be a Hulk-sized task if there ever was one. There have been several on-screen Hulks over the years. Why, in just the MCU alone, there were technically 3. In Bruce Banner's MCU debut, the part was played by Edward Norton, who gave a performance that was well acted, but feels very A Tale of Two Cities to me. Go figure. Ed Norton is a good actor. I have actually never seen a bad performance by this actor. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I'm just saying I haven't seen it. And I think in some sense he was very good casting as this character. He definitely does well playing into the character's intellect. But I don't really get a good grasp for the character's tragedy. Edward Norton felt far too in control of his actions. And because of that, his angry outbursts actually felt a little bit forced to me. I really couldn't buy into this Hulk being a tortured soul, burdened by issues mostly outside of his control. Regardless, he made for a likable lead. And it would have been interesting seeing what route this version of the character would have went down, because it certainly wasn't the way that they wound up going with his successor in the sequels. The role was filled by Mark Ruffalo. He started off in the Avengers, and he's still continuing in the role to this day. But he never really felt like the character from the first film. And he also didn't really feel like the character from the comics either. His presentation was all different. Somehow, this was an even calmer Hulk. I mean, sure, his Bruce was a little neurotic, a little bit confused and unsure of himself at all times, but I don't think I'd describe his Hulk as particularly angry. Like the Hulk that came before him, I always felt that the use of his powers lacked the impact that it could have had. Because there's something truly beautiful about showing someone take their curse and turn it into a gift. And I don't know, I didn't get that here. I always felt like the Hulk transformations came far too easy for him. Having said that, I also feel that Ruffalo has a sense of sincerity to him. You felt for him when things didn't go his way, when he had relationship woes or identity issues. He's a very wholesome and shockingly human Hulk. I completely understand why audiences fell in love with him in this portrayal. But he is just so different from his predecessor that for a long time being, there was some debate on whether or not the first Hulk movie was even considered canon. Yeah, you know, that movie that ended with Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man showing up and kickstarting the whole MCU? For some reason, some people thought that didn't count anymore. That was considered to potentially be non-canon now, all because the Hulk had a new face and a new personality. Luckily, this discussion calmed down after Captain America: Civil War, a movie that saw William Hurt return to the role of General Ross 8 years later. Ironically, General Ross would be recast several years later following the passing of the actor who played him. In my personal opinion, both Norton and Ruffalo are missing the anger that makes him the Hulk. The raw, scary unpredictability that comes with this character. And I think a lot of that has to go toward the audience these movies were geared toward. The MCU has always tiptoed around certain issues that they deem too adult, which makes sense as these movies were mainly made for a younger audience, which is why Tony has issues with anxiety instead of alcohol. So they might have felt that showcasing severe anger issues might be in poor taste. Understandable, but how do you really tell a Hulk story without that? The guy wasn't just green from gamma rays. I guess what I'm saying is, if it came down to it and I had to choose between Edward Norton or Mark Ruffalo, I'd go with Eric Bana. He may have been in the worst Hulk movie, but he was far from the worst Hulk. Better than any actor that came before or after him, Eric Bana really captured the tortured and tormented soul of Bruce Banner. He was a well-meaning loose cannon. He had a good heart, but he had issues that were an issue to all those he came in contact with. He was just as scared of the Hulk as everyone else around him. And he really felt like a guy who was just being strung along for the ride. By the end of the movie, he gains a sense of control, and his arc makes sense. But even in saying that, it still feels like it's going to be a work in progress. I don't care that he was in the worst Hulk movie, he was to me the best Hulk. In terms of accuracy, it's this one for me. You know, Hulk dogs aside. In terms of having a compelling character, well, once again, it's this one for me. The actor, not the movie. I do, however, want to credit Mark Ruffalo with this. I don't think his interpretation was ideal for the character, but this iteration of the character became ideal for him. The character's transformation into Smart Hulk was a wise decision, as it plays into the strengths of the actor that's playing him. Now you get to showcase his personality no matter what his pant size is. Again, don't think it's ideal for the character, but it's ideal for this version of the character. I don't think this is what you want to see Hulk doing, but it's kind of what you want to see Mark Ruffalo doing. So it might not work in one way, but it certainly works in another. Actually, I feel very similar to Chris Hemsworth playing Thor. He's not playing Door. He is not a door. I really need to reiterate here that I don't have a problem with any of the performances. I can't actually say that I think any of the acting here is bad. It's just that the part these actors were asked to play doesn't seem to be the same character from the comics. In actuality, I don't think we've ever gotten a bad Hulk. A couple inaccurate ones maybe, but not bad. Still, each and every Hulk brought something else to the table. Banner played into the character's more unhinged nature, Norton brought out the character's obsessive brilliance, and Ruffalo showcased the character's more likable and even lovable qualities. They were each uniquely their own and still the Hulk. Now earlier on you may have noticed that I mentioned that there were in fact 3 Hulks in the MCU. Yet I've only listed 2. So you may be asking yourself,
who's the third man?
Well, that is in fact the OG Hulk, Lou Ferrigno. The man played the part in live action from 1977 to 1990. He would continue to lend his voice to the angry hero in animation, and for a time being in the MCU, acting as the Hulk in The Incredible Hulk and the first 2 Avengers movies. There's obviously a lot more to examine with his time as the character. I mean, the guy did the job longer than anyone I can foresee in the near future doing it. I think he's probably the name that's closest associated to this role even today. He was really iconic, so much so that the rest of his career was still defined by this role even when he wasn't playing it. But I think that really needs its own video. 2.5 Men was a show that I learned to love, and eventually learned to hate. But throughout its run, it was never a show that I learned to understand, because there were just some behind-the-scenes choices that are still confusing to me to this day, like bringing back actresses to play different parts, despite looking and acting the very same way as their last appearance on the show. This happened a lot, actually. As a matter of fact, I could probably and should probably make a video on that. I just might. But I think the strangest thing this show ever did, in terms of casting at least, the strangest thing this show ever did early on was recast a role. Now that doesn't sound all that weird, especially given the fact that I've talked about several parts portrayed by multiple actors. This is clearly something that happens often with ongoing series and franchises. Characters are a necessity, and actors aren't always a guarantee. Long-term commitments are hard to come by without contracts, and it's hard to give a long-term contract to somebody who's only playing a bit part episodically. So having someone else come sub in for the character isn't all that surprising. But for this, it's more the part that they decided to recast, because the show didn't find a new actor for an important role. This wasn't a new old main character, or a fresh face for a supporting part. This was a one-off character coming back, years later, but played by a different person. And that's just Act 1. Now, as I mentioned before, there were a lot of actresses on this series that were being recycled. So in a series that sees a lot of women play multiple roles, this is the one exception where we see multiple women play one. The role in question was Jake's teacher and one-time fling of Charlie's, Miss Pasternak. While she seems sweet on the surface, she's actually super strict.
Why did you flip Miss Pasternak off?
Excuse me, we don't end our sentences with prepositions. We say, why did you flip off Miss Pasternak?
I think that answers your question. Can we have a moment, please?
I think that'd be a good idea. And it's, may we have a moment, please?
Can I use the restroom?
May I use the restroom?
All right.
All right, what?
All right, Miss Pasternak.
And it's also revealed that she has a little bit of a mean streak, admitting to never liking Jake and intentionally mistreating him.
Because she picks on me?
Jake, I don't treat you any differently than any of the other students. Can I tell you a little secret? I never really cared for Jake.
But you said you treated him like all the other kids.
Well, you have to say that. You're mad at me.
No.
Yes, you are.
No, not mad.
Then what's your problem?
After what would otherwise be another one-night stand for Charlie, he finds that Miss Pasternak is clingy, and maybe a little bit crazy, for lack of a better word. Those aren't my words, that's definitely the presentation of this character. The part was originally played by Missy Pyle in her first appearance in the second season, but immediately after that, the role would be recast with actress Alicia Witt filling in as the former 5th grade teacher.
Oh, right, Miss Pasternak, 5th grade, Woodward Avenue Elementary School.
Oh, yeah, Miss Pasternak. Oh, yeah, Miss Pasternak.
Oh, you want to catch up? Yeah, sure, let's catch up. Let's see. After you dumped me, I had a nervous breakdown. And then after my breakdown, I got fired and blackballed from teaching. I lost my house, I'm living in a cheap motel, and my new career is giving lap dances to strangers while I'm swinging by my crotch on a pole 8 times a night.
Okay, well, thanks for the update.
Now, this story beat may sound insane. Although, granted that we're talking about 2.5 Men, that's kind of the name of the game with this show. But that plot point was actually set up within the character's first appearance. So this did feel like a fitting follow-up. There was groundwork laid for this story arc.
And his loving hand has been guiding me ever since I quit pole dancing in Reno.
No kidding, which club?
And I think that helps this episode feel in canon with the first. Despite the change, this still feels like a natural follow-up. Actually, to both the show and the actress's credit, despite the recast, the character still stays the same. Alicia Witt made an effort in making the character feel mostly unchanged, with a performance that replicates the original relatively well. And the characterization of the character doesn't skip a beat either. She's a crazy Christian lady with an intense infatuation for our sinful leading man. And she's still also not that fond of Jake. The show even ends her second outing the same way they ended her first, proving that this was coming at a point in time where despite the success that the show was seeing, it was still actively trying. This episode saw the teacher turned dancer, turned tutor out of Charlie's pity. But in the end, as always, the status quo is maintained and the episodic plot gets undone to factory reset. So much so that the next time we see this character on the show, she is once again being played by Missy Pyle, who would continue to play the part right up until the series finale, making guest appearances in the 7th, 9th, and 12th seasons of the show. So this was less of a recast and more one actress temporarily standing in for another. Having said that, this one-off appearance was really memorable. As a matter of fact, I would say that it was a highlight in this character's tenure on the show. Probably in part because the character's first 2 appearances were her only story-centered episodes, with future appearances of the character being less a part of the plot and more of a cameo and a callback, which was a fine capacity to use this character in. As a matter of fact, it's the second actress's performance that I see so often brought up. And I'm not talking about by fans of the series, I'm talking about the series' official channel, which by the way, if you haven't seen it, feel free to check it out. It's got highlights of the show. If anybody wanted to dip their toe into the series and see if it was worth their watch, that's a good place to do it. Having said that, it's the second actress's one-off time on the show that is often included in clip compilations of the series. So make of that what you will. Regardless, the part was obviously always Missy Pyle's. The reason for this temporary recast is unknown. I can't really find any official information on it, there's never been a reason given. But if I was a betting man like Charlie, I'd say that it was probably that the actress was a little uncomfortable with the content of some scenes. While Missy Pyle's version of the character always alluded to a similar past, you never saw the actual actress acting in such a manner. You know, which is valid. Everyone has their own boundaries, and I don't even know if that's legitimate, that's just my own personal guess. And while I loved Missy Pyle, I think that she absolutely made the character, I will say that Alicia deserves a lot of the credit for properly portraying her predecessor. It's hard enough to ask someone to play a part properly. It's even harder to ask someone to play someone else's part properly. The show Charmed is no stranger to recasting. Maybe most famously when problems arose on set between on-screen sisters and real-life rivals, Alyssa Milano and Shannon Doherty, the series decided to get rid of the show's oldest sister, Prue, and in her place, write in a brand new younger sister, Paige, played by Rose McGowan, though that's neither here nor there. But what I think is even more interesting than that is one of the show's weirdest and maybe even worst cases of recasting. That, of course, being the casting of the Charmed One's father, Victor. Victor was the sister's neglectful father who hadn't been involved in the girl's upbringing, having had nothing to do with his daughters in 2 decades. Shortly into season 1, he's officially introduced, showing up as early as the 3rd episode of the series, where the part is played by actor Anthony Dennison. This Victor was a suit-wearing businessman that chomped on cigars, and despite being a mortal man, he was still someone that stood his ground with magic users, not showing fear in the face of the unknown. He wasn't present in his daughters' lives, but it was clear that he still cared for them, trying to protect them at any cost, even if that cost was his relationship with his daughters, or his own life. He isn't actively involved in their lives, and it doesn't seem like he wants to be actively involved in their lives. So, of course, at the end of this episode, he leaves to restore the status quo. All of that would be fine and good, except the next time that we see this character on the show, he's a completely different character.
Have you seen him around?
And I'm not just talking about who's playing him. Different characterization, different last name, different actor.
Last week we have no dad, and now we have 2?
Somehow, without reason, Victor Hallowell became Victor Bennett.
What did you say your name was?
I think you know what my name is.
And this time the character was played by James Reed, who would become the permanent and definitive Victor. This Victor was a lot more pleasant seeming and not nearly as rough around the edges. The last Victor could very well be mistaken as a big bad, maybe even some sort of a dark wizard or warlock. But this one, it was clear that this one was just a guy. There were next to no similarities between the 2 Charmed One's fathers. This Victor was more into jackets than he was into suits, and was also not nearly as knowledgeable on the supernatural as his predecessor, feeling much less confident in taking on threats from the mystical world. Even the small details don't match up at all, like how they addressed their daughters. The first Victor often spoke to his family like strangers, where the second one spoke to them like they were family. Victor 1 would even call Prue by her full name, which, to my knowledge, I don't think Victor 2 had ever done. Simply put, the first Victor was a father, but the second Victor was a dad. But both Victors were so substantially different that it's kind of hard for me to see them as one and the same. I couldn't see the first actor being as caring or as loving as the second, and I couldn't see that second actor being as cold and removed and stoic as the first one. So this wasn't just a case of recasting, this was more of a reimagining. And allegedly this retconning was in part due to the first actor, who was apparently let go because of his chemistry with the leads. More specifically, the particular chemistry he had with the leads. According to that first actor, he was let go because apparently producers didn't feel like he was the fatherly type, feeling like a lot of his scenes with the girls made him come off more like a love interest for Prue or Phoebe.
You were daddy number 1.
First father.
Which is really interesting. Can I ask, what happened?
They said, no, you just look too young. They said, you just look like, there was a scene you did with Shannon where you were holding her and you thought you were more like you were going to date her rather than to be her father.
Yeah, that's what we said yesterday. Said there was sexual tension.
There was.
No, you told me that there was sexual tension, and
EK agrees.
Gives new meaning to the term daddy issues.
And I don't really agree with that, but I do think that there was a bunch of questionable dialogue that probably didn't do that thought process a service.
I'm staying at the Beaumark. What do you say you and your sisters join me for dinner?
How dare you?
Fiery temper. I like that.
A drink? You are legal, right?
Barely, but no thanks.
How about a hug?
When Holly looked at you and said,
We're still your little girls. We're just witches.
like the way she said it was so sexual, and I was like,
It was not.
How inappropriate with your
I don't
father.
know, was it? And
Phoebe comes and visits while you're getting a massage.
Yeah, I had a towel around me. It was like,
And she was wearing like a low cut, really tight top.
Yeah.
Also, and then you're in a towel with a robe over it, and you hug her, and I'm like, yeah.
And she said,
Daddy?
Exactly. Hello, Daddy. A man that I haven't seen since I was 1 year old, but now I call him Daddy.
I should be slapped and persecuted.
The closest we get to any kind of acknowledgement of this change is in the second actor's first episode, where Piper confronts a man who she thinks is her father, and that man being a gray-haired man in a suit. A man who looks a lot more like her first father, rather than the one this episode would debut. I think it's obvious for most fans of the show that the second and much more prominent actor is the character, whereas the first one was, for lack of a better word, maybe a creative mistake. But in my opinion, I actually think both portrayals come with pros and problems. Like, for example, Victor Bennett clearly has chemistry with his dearly departed ex-wife, whereas for me, it would be hard to see Victor Hallowell with her. But alternatively, it's hard to imagine Victor Bennett walking out on his children's lives, whereas to me, it's a lot more believable that someone like Victor Hallowell would. The latter act definitely paved the way for a lot of more wholesome moments between the family. But admittedly, I think the former actor would have led to a lot more interesting developments and story arcs. Weirdness aside, I thought there was really something to that first interpretation, but I can obviously see the merit to the second adaptation as well. James Reed definitely complemented the cast a lot better, and matched the tone of the seasons incredibly well, feeling like he'd been there the whole time despite the character's absence. He seemed to feel a lot more in place, and he had incredible chemistry with his on-screen next of kin.
You guys are very different, too. It's completely different.
It is a completely different vibe.
It's a completely different character with him.
And the guy who replaced me, James, I know James. I mean, we weren't like, we weren't like homies or anything like that, but we knew each other. I guess, I'm replacing you. I said, no, I didn't know that. And I said, but have fun, have a good time. I mean, what am I going to do? Kill him so that I can do the role,
Nevertheless, this was a tale of two on a show about the power of three. Recasts in TV shows are nothing new. You'll find no shortage of examples. It happens all the time for a variety of different reasons. Pay disputes, other acting opportunities, conflicts between co-stars, or other outside personal reasons. The list goes on. There are plenty of reasons for actors to leave shows, or be asked to leave. But sometimes just because you lose an actor doesn't mean you have to lose a character. Everyone knows about the two Beckys on Roseanne, or the two Darrens on Bewitched, played by a couple of dicks. But there's plenty of recasts that often get lost to the annals of time, or just go unspoken of. Today's topic is one such occasion. The show Shameless had a cast of characters enter and exit the series throughout its time, sometimes at rapid speed. The show that ended hardly resembled the show that began, in terms of its cast of characters at least. One such character lost was Mandy Milkovich, a part that was played by two different actresses, and while both were similar in style, they were very different in substance and execution. I'd like to go more into Mandy as a person at a later date, so today I mainly want to focus on Mandy as a performance and the two performers that played her. In season 1, the part was played by actress Jane Levy.
Mandy?
Hey, Ian.
What's going on?
Well, I think you might be my knight in shining armor. I could pretend to be your girlfriend at school and stuff. Then no one would ever give you a hard time. You could keep the creepy guys away from me.
What was that for?
I just felt like kissing my boyfriend. Have fun, Cash.
Nice jacket Cash bought you, by the way. Thanks.
Yeah. Tell Cash I'll take it in the if he gets me free stuff. Cash had better move his family back to Baghdad before Mickey gets out.
It's from Evanston.
Won't be nearly far enough.
Who portrayed the character as an unpredictable problem child. She was the radical rebel without a cause. She was so obnoxious and outrageous, you never truly knew what she'd do next. Simply put, you couldn't plan for this Mandy. While she showcased a big personality, at times it seemed to go into borderline psychotic territories, jumping to extremes whenever she felt slighted. Her reckless nature caused problems for the Gallagher boys early on, but she quickly turned things around and got on good terms with them, acting as Ian's fake girlfriend to help him hide his sexuality. And while this actress was great in the part and really gave a voice to this character that would not stop shouting, she didn't return to the role the following season, choosing instead to be the lead on the show, Suburgatory, whatever that is. She was replaced the following season by actress Emma Greenwell.
You know what? Nothing's ever your problem. For once, make something your problem.
I sent him some girl and girl last week. It's the only thing he ever wants. So just send him a selfie.
A selfie?
Picture. What are you doing?
What happened?
I've got blood on this dress. I've worn this like twice. Miss a hearing, and my dad will come after you with a linoleum knife and a bucket of battery acid. He drinks and mistakes me for mom. Only once in a while. Not like it's a big deal.
You look really pretty, Mandy.
She was still troubled, but she seemed less like chaos incarnate. Emma's Mandy felt much more sympathetic than her predecessor. She had many more moments of sincerity, but it also sort of felt like Emma turned the volume down a bit on this otherwise very loud character. She was much more calm in demeanor and delivery. Maybe this was in an effort to make her a little bit less distracting, as she'd take up more of a supporting role in following seasons. Becoming integral to the show, the character always had a softer side, but it's much more prevalent in this second iteration of the character. Mandy feels much more open and vulnerable with Emma in the part. She brought a much more compassionate edge to the character that allowed her potential relationship with Lip to prosper. Emma's Mandy could be heartless to some, but she had plenty of moments that were heartfelt. She made countless sacrifices. She shows very little regard for herself and constantly goes above and beyond for Lip, in ways that I just, quite frankly, couldn't see the first actress doing. Emma truly captured the tragedy of this character, taking part in some of the most heartbreaking stories those seasons provided fans. However, that's not to say that Emma's Mandy didn't meet Jane's Mandy's madness. With Mandy 1, the mayhem was always front and center. And while that mayhem was still very much a fixture of Mandy 2, it wasn't a constant. She may have been more grounded on the surface in the approach to the character, but the character's feet didn't remain firmly planted for long. When pushed, she'd swing off the handle, becoming completely unhinged. Actually, I would argue, if provoked, this Mandy was even more ruthless than the original. When the Gallagher boys think you're going too far, you've sunk far past the depths of good taste. Acting either in revenge or selflessness, she hits Karen with her car, nearly killing her and leaving her with permanent brain damage. She threatens to bury a woman in her own front yard. I mean, granted that woman was a predator, but nonetheless. Despite her vulnerability, she's not weak by any means. She stands her ground for the most part. I think at the end of the day, these are both good portrayals of the same character. They're just a different interpretation of that character. It's the same brand, but it's a different flavor. Despite having significantly less time in her role than her successor, I thought Jane felt more at home with the tone of the show. She was allowed to be a much more interesting character. It didn't matter that she struggled for screen time, because she managed to make an impression with that first season, and was kind of my favorite character throughout the first couple of episodes, in spite of herself. So as far as I'm concerned, first Mandy was a lot more fun in the role. However, the second Mandy did well as well. Mandy came off as much more sympathetic. She grounded the character and humanized her. You certainly can't dismiss her contributions, not only from having played the part for so long, but for further developing that character and taking part in the character's greatest arcs. The relationship she had with Lip, the feud with Karen, all of those are products of Emma's time in the role. Ultimately, I think this is one of those occasions where the recast isn't necessarily better or worse. It pretty much breaks even. Jane made Mandy a tragic persona, but Emma's Mandy was a troubled person.
Strike that. Reverse it.
Jane makes more of an impression, but Emma made more of an impact. There's a definite difference in the demeanor of these two Mandys to a degree. However, there's still a fair amount of common ground between the two performances, for these two people to feel like this one person. And I think canonically, the change in character could be seen as a growth in that character. From first impressions in Season 1, to becoming well acquainted with the Gallaghers and the audience by Season 2. I think it'd be more than fair to say that these friendships had an influence on her, and her time with Lip and Ian allowed her to let her guard down and open up more. Despite all the differences, the character pretty much feels the same, just with some additional developments. Respectively, both these actresses were good in the part they were given, but different things were asked of them when they were in that part. So it becomes really hard to choose one over the other. What surprises me most about this character, though, and this might be a little bit of an unrelated note, is just how little she factored into the later seasons of the show. She was once an important piece of the puzzle, but somehow she faded into the background before eventually fading from existence. Meanwhile, her on-screen brother stuck around to the very end of the series, playing a vital part in Ian's character development and becoming one of the main cast members. And yet, Mandy doesn't even get so much as a cameo or a name drop outside of one time after her absence. She doesn't show up for the major moments in her brother's life. He gets married to her best friend, and she's still nowhere to be seen, and nobody's asking about her. The character's final farewell is kind of unfortunate. It leaves off on such a sad note with no positive path for her. But then again, who on the show ever got a happy ending? I've actually really wanted to do The Day It Died for Shameless. So if you'd be interested in seeing me go through that entire show and talk about the day that it all went downhill, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying...
There's another one.
I am vengeance. I am the night. And that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.